Are drug prices going to go down as a result of this?
For the vast majority of Americans, no. I sincerely doubt it. There is no reason to conclude that based on what we learned, at least yesterday, from Albert Bourla in the Oval Office and the promises that Pfizer has made. We can get into the nitty-gritty, but I think the main thing, the promise to Medicaid, an important caveat there is that patients on Medicaid already pays the lowest price available in the United States. It is legally obligated to get that. So the notion that Pfizer making a commitment to lower that further would change the out-of-pocket costs for patients, I just don't think there's much there. And furthermore, in terms of Pfizer's business, only about 5% of that business accounts for doing business with Medicaid. That's the word business probably too many times. And I think the main thing that should drive the reaction here is that in this announcement, Pfizer, which has a fiduciary duty to maximize its profits and to update shareholders on its guidance, did not update its guidance. The company said this thing that ostensibly means we're going to make less money, at least that's how the president characterized it, but didn't actually say we're going to make less money, which of course legally they're required to do. And I feel like that through line is maybe the lens, maybe not cynicism, but the lens of reality that people should look at these announcements.
Well, look no further than the share price reaction.
I said yesterday, I'm like, why is this stock rallying? They're going to make less money. I just made no sense. Everybody's like, well, it's all about the tariff thing. And I'm like,
true.
And that is certainly a part of it. But I'm like, they're going to make less money. How can this be a good thing?
Right. So I think the relief that you're seeing in the share price reaction is twofold, or maybe even threefold. One, it alleviates the threat that the Trump administration was really going to come down hard with an aggressive policy that would be on the books that would really constrain what drug companies could charge. Instead, we get this voluntary, relatively vague promise from Pfizer that is expected to set a template for the company's peers, Eli Lilly, Merck, et cetera. They will probably all have their day at the Oval Office to do a similar kind of dog and pony show. And then furthermore, what's established is that if you make those promises, you get a reprieve from tariffs, which is the other kind of overhang for the entire sector, is this fear that the import of medicines from Europe would face levies of, the president has said, 100, 200%. The notion that if you just go out there and say, we're going to follow what the administration wants on drug pricing, we get that alleviation.
Damian, just quickly, just to be fair, I mean, has Pfizer come back and said, this is going to impact us financially, or it's not going to impact? Have we gotten any clarification from the company on this?
They have not. There hasn't been a follow-on filing with the SEC kind of making clear that they're restating any guidance. And furthermore, what they've said is that the terms of their agreement with the White House are confidential. So respectfully, we can only conclude what's been said publicly.
Damian, sit tight. We're going to bring in Angie Frank. She's CEO of the private health company Kalderos. The firm does drug discount management. It uses AI as well as communicating with different parties involved in the negotiating process to get consumers the best prices. She joins us from Wisconsin. Angie, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Damian, because you're right in the middle of this drug pricing thing. Are drug prices going to come down as a result of what we saw at the White House yesterday?
I think what Damian said, there's some truth to that. I think at the end of the day, we won't all feel it immediately, but I do think drug prices are going to come down. I think the announcement yesterday is a big change to the system, and it is the first step in what I think will be multiple steps. We're certainly opening up more channels for patients to access their drugs at more affordable prices. And I think the underlying, the Medicaid price that states currently pay is going to come down based on Pfizer's announcement yesterday.
Well, that's interesting. What would the mechanism for that be? Because that's what I found myself wondering even yesterday in the announcement, which granted was lacking key details for obvious reasons, is very new. But why would this kind of set in motion a snowball that would end with patients paying less at the pharmacy counter?
Yeah. So I think, if you look at the overall list prices starting to come down to an MFN-like number, and that opening up
the most favored
more
nations.
Yes, most favored nations, exactly. And that opening up more channels for patients to access their drugs at lower rates. I do think the direct model, the website that was also announced yesterday, which opens up a channel for patients to be purchasing directly at lower costs, could really have a ripple effect on the way benefits are offered and how employers and self-insured employers start constructing benefit plans that give their employees access to drugs, which may bypass other players in the system, the traditional players in the system, middlemen that have been making money off of drug pricing and discounts and rebate models that really didn't benefit patients directly. So I think the new channels being opened up and the new price point at max most favored nation will, over the longer term, have a pretty significant impact.
Nothing confuses me as much as like picking up a prescription and coupons and pharmacy benefits. And I don't know, it's just kind of crazy. Damian, the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, they are being looked at closely, like another layer that drives up costs. And so that is certainly part of the narrative here. So does that potentially remove that in what we heard from the president and the CEO of Pfizer yesterday, but then throw in this TrumpRx? Like, what role is that play?
That we need to see play out. But I think through the eyes of Pfizer and certainly people in the pharmaceutical industry, there is an optimism and maybe a hope that the agreement announced yesterday, if in fact it's a template for other companies, will shift the White House's attention away from pharmaceutical manufacturers and toward the PBMs and the other middlemen that you mentioned. And I think to Angie's point, there is a potential that TrumpRx, this sort of direct-to-patient offering that we've heard about, there are arguments as to just how popular that might be. How many people who don't have insurance would be willing to pay out of pocket hundreds or even thousands of dollars a year for a medicine?
Is that what TrumpRx would offer? Is it an insurance, like this is not covered by insurance?
It would be a cash pay business. Okay. And so we assume that the majority of customers for it would be uninsured or underinsured because otherwise they could get the drugs much cheaper through their insurance carrier. But the opportunity, I realize we're getting kind of in the weeds here, the opportunity is if one of those direct offerings were selling instead to employers rather than patients themselves, then they would be truly bypassing the middlemen that exist. This is sort of the Mark Cuban model that he's advocating.
Cost plus drugs.
Exactly. So if Trump, and I'm using my imagination here, this is not something anybody's announced, if TrumpRx, the website that has not yet launched but has been described, were to expand its aperture to include employers, then we could be talking about legitimate savings for all parties involved and a huge change to the way it's done now.
Angie, come on back in here and talk a little bit about the innovation side of things, because Albert Bourla at the White House yesterday said it's not just the American patient who will be a big winner, but it would also be the American innovation and the American economy. Perhaps there are those out there who might say, okay, well, if drug companies aren't able to make as much money from the drugs that they sell, R&D in this space might suffer. We know it's expensive to run the clinical trials and to do the R&D. What do you think it means for American innovation when it comes to pharmaceuticals?
Well, I think it was great. I agree with Albert on all points. I think it's great for America that we're moving manufacturing and that level of innovation, job creation, et cetera, to the U.S. When you simplify the supply chain and the pricing mechanisms for our current drug pricing model, when you simplify that, today we lack so much transparency in how prices are established and who gets which price. And to your point earlier, Carol, where you mentioned the coupons and the copays and all these things are so confusing. They're confusing by design. People are making a lot of money off of that confusion and that opacity. When you simplify and drive more transparency, you have less waste in the system, and that waste will feed the top of the funnel. That will be dollars that can go directly to the top of the innovation funnel and enable manufacturers to continue to work on and innovate more drugs and more medication therapies that help patients with life-saving and life-changing conditions. So it takes $2.5 billion to bring a drug to market. So every dollar of waste compromises our ability to invest in more therapies. So I think it's going to have a tremendous impact over the long run.
Angie, just got about a minute left. I mean, just talk to us about what you do. It's a data engine, it's information. You have, it looks like a couple of different constituencies that you work with, but just give us an idea and what that tells you about kind of the drug industry and drug pricing industry, what you have been seeing.
Yeah, we really have a technology platform where we ingest, large volumes of data We apply logic and rules around various pricing programs and discounts and rebates. And then we ensure price integrity, that the right price is going to the right set of patients and the right, for that particular therapy. So we're really driving quite a bit of price integrity in the system. The constituents that we work with include both pharmaceutical manufacturers and providers. And we really believe fundamentally that ensuring that the providers and the manufacturers can work more closely, directly together benefits Americans, benefits patients, benefits innovation.
10 seconds, Damian. Who we're going to hear from next? What CEO?
The expectation is that Eli Lilly will be the next company to take the stage. The president has said their name constantly without totally giving it away. But like I said, the expectation also is that all of the major peers will have their day at the Oval Office.